There's something that I heard somebody say once: don't die with your music still in you. Don't die with
Mm.
your music still in you. Meaning that when I walked into the gallery for the first time and I looked around and I just looked at everything, I just broke down crying. And I put my head around and I said, where did this come from? Where did it come from? And it was such a moment. I couldn't, I looked inside me and I said, it was in there. I had no clue. And it took all of the adversity and being knocked down to find something that I would have never discovered inside me ever in my whole life. There's a spiritual flow you're in or you're not. And you're either connected to this spiritual energy. I don't feel alone when I'm there, but I can isolate off of it and I can totally make a mess. And so in my best, I know there's something there. I can look up and I can get, I can't really name it. I don't have a religious perspective on it, but I'm not smart enough to not believe that there's some life energy that it supports you or you're fighting against it. You're either going against the current or you're going with the current. And if you're acting with integrity, you're doing what your heart needs to do, and you're helping other people, you are going with the current. And it just all blends together as this beautiful thing that makes your life amazing. And that's what I choose. That's what it means for me. I'm not good at analyzing it, I guess,
Yeah. Hey, sober people and sober adjacent people. Welcome to I Have 12 Questions. I'm Amanda Patton, your host, a leading expert on nothing. However, I am in recovery and I love it so much so that I launched this podcast where we get to talk to people who are trudging the road to happy freaking destiny across all the different ways that people get there. So while this is definitely through the lens of recovery and sobriety, the stories and the themes that we'll be covering are universally human. So love, loss, grief, excitement, parenting, outside issues, purpose, God stuff, whatever. In the words of the great Ted Lasso by way of Walt Whitman, I want to be curious, not judgmental. So like I said, we'll be talking to people in recovery. We're going to be talking to experts and practitioners who help those people along their path in recovery. And we're just really excited to hear people tell their stories and to be inspired by them and to create a community of support for everybody in recovery and people who know and love people who struggle with addiction issues and whatnot. So anyways, we're so glad you're here and thanks for listening. Hey listeners, just a quick disclaimer before we get into the interview. These episodes may contain adult language and subject matter that's not appropriate for all audiences. Also, we are not doctors or psychiatrists, so what we share on these episodes is certainly not to be considered medical or psychological advice, just our own personal experiences, which we hope will be helpful to others on a similar quest. So that's it, and thanks for listening. Hey, sober family, our entire listener community. We have a great show in store today. Our guest is Mike Blanchard. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to just chat him up a little bit for a second. So first of all, he has a really compelling recovery story, and that's what we're always here to talk about. But he's also put out two really beautiful and poignant books that combine his photography with his recovery. And one of them is called Fighting for My Life, and the other one is Through a Sober Lens. And he also runs an art gallery on Martha's Vineyard where he just takes these majestic pictures of nature, and they inspire people and heal people, himself included. They do a calendar that raises money to fight hunger in his community. And he also supports local recovery-based programs and appears on talk show radios all across the world, maybe even across the country. I can't remember. We'll get into that in a minute. But as a guest, as an expert, and then he teaches photography, among other things. So I heard his story on the Bubble Hour with Jean McCarthy, and she hosts the Bubble Hour in Tiny Bubble. She's actually a guest, and you guys know, if you know me, you know how helpful her podcasts have been in my recovery. So I digress. I was on the trail listening to the Bubble Hour, and Mike's story was on. And I was walking my dogs, and it's one of those things where I had to slow down, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so relatable. And I went and sat under a tree and cried. Um, so that's the type of relatability and emotion that Mike puts into his story when he takes pictures, when he talks about it, when he's out in the community sharing and helping others. So the fact that he's here today with me is just like unbelievable. And I'm so grateful and excited. And you can find Michael's work at BlanchardPhotoMB.com. I'm going to put that in the description and all that kind of stuff so you can see all the things he's up to. But without further ado, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I just wrote down everything you said about me so that I can remember that forever and ever. God, I'm like really good, I guess. Jeez.
You're good. Do you like Mike or Michael?
Mike's fine. My mom, when I was in trouble, she'd say, Michael Raymond, get in here. And so it still has that little bit of like, I'm in trouble if you use Michael. But the artistic side is supposed to be Michael, but Mike is.
Oh, okay. So let's start with an icebreaker. If your life had a theme song, what would it be?
So, have you ever watched the musical Wicked?
Oh my God, yes.
Defying Gravity.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I thought about it because there's this, at the end of the song, the Wicked Witch of the West, obviously, who's been sort of persecuted and misunderstood. She grew up green. So anybody that grows up green is going to have a problem. All right.
Right?
Didn't know her place, didn't know what she was supposed to do, was lost, misunderstood. And then that song, kind of goes through. And in the end, where she says, if you care to find me, look to the western sky. As someone told me lately, everyone deserves a chance to fly, and if I'm flying solo, at least I'm flying free. And for those who ground me, send a message back from me that I'm flying high, defying gravity. And I love the song. And I get all emotional when I listen to it. And it's the thing is, though, is I never understood why, because when I first came back from rehab and I heard the song, it's like this comeback song, right? Yeah. Like, all of those of you who doubt me, yeah, I screwed up, I made mistakes, but I'm a real person now. Give me a chance. I'm gonna, I'm back, and I want to prove, through my actions, that on and on and on. And the song became kind of like a theme song when people weren't going to let me do it. But then over time, I realized the reason the song's so emotional for me is that the gravity that I try to defy is inside me. Yeah. It's my self-stigma, my self-negative opinion that's been there for my whole life. And so the reason it gets emotional is I say, I'm going to defy gravity. And that's not just showing other people. It's convincing me, because I like to believe I have it all together at this stage of life in 13 years sobriety, but I don't. And I still fight those negative, genetics, upbringing, whatever. And it becomes a cheering song to say, look, I can defy. I think I've already proved the other people wrong at this point. And so now it's really a song just to remind me that I have to overcome those things. So second place was Sweet Victory by SpongeBob SquarePants. If you haven't listened to it, so I love SpongeBob, and there's this Sweet Victory. He sings in the Bubble Bowl. You got just YouTube it. It's a cool song.
I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. Okay. Wow. I didn't expect to get emotional on the icebreaker, but
know the song.
So I know that I've heard your whole story, and we don't have, tons of time. So maybe a Cliff Notes version, but can you just kind of take us through the highlight reel or low light reel of, what it was like for you in active addiction, kind of what got you to recovery?
Yeah, I can, I like to just get through that, because the good part of the story is where it leads. But just so people know, I was an athlete, marathon runner, blah, blah, blah. I had confusion about, just like the Wicked Witch of the West, what I'm supposed to do in life. I felt total lack of self-esteem, self-love. I grew up more or less alone. I had my dogs. That was my whole life, was my dogs. I had issues with growing up with my parents. And eventually I got married because I needed to know someone loved me. But even within that, I was going through the business world, and I was on a ladder to success like no other. Getting my master's degree, trying to get bigger titles, trying to get more money. That was it. And I ended up getting a DUI with my son in the car, and he was like 6 years old. And it was the most horrifying moment of my life. That was 12, 13 years before the collapse. And so then I kind of brushed that aside, did the usual, I'm going to, go to the meetings and, do the course and show everybody I'm fine. And then I proceeded. But, as a marathon runner, the endorphins were everything to me. And as I ran 15, 20 marathons, eventually you get old and you start to break down. And I didn't have the relief. I couldn't run the miles that I needed to anymore. So I started glasses of wine in the evening. And then it's not like some alcoholics drink till they pass out from the first moment. Me, you would never have noticed it happen. It happened over 30 years. It was an imperceptible increase in the amount of alcohol that I was taking in. And eventually, though, I ended up getting married, and this person meant so much to me. And we started to fight. And because of my ambitions, I moved to Maine. She stayed in Boston. It created a really negative atmosphere. And I was at the peak of my alcoholism at that point. And so I'm sitting in Maine being the chief operating officer with 1,000 employees. She's sitting back in Boston, not happy that I moved to Maine. And we would get into regular fights. And at this point, I was drinking probably almost a quart of vodka a day. Right out of the bottle, I was filling Poland Spring bottles with vodka, and I'd go into work. It was a miracle. Some people could smell, I'm sure, but they didn't have the courage to say anything. And through that fight process, we'd have a fight. I thought I was losing her. I'd grab the bottle, put it in the car, guzzle as much as I could, and I'd fly down to fix the fight. 3 times, 3 fights, 3 times, 3 DUIs in succession. And, back then I said, this is just insane. I mean, they talk about sports books, FanDuel and DraftKings. This would be like winning the frickin' total $1 billion if you could bet on, will he get arrested 3 times in 3 months? If you put that as your bet, like on the brackets, you'd be like a frickin' millionaire. It seems so improbable.
Yeah.
Now I look at it and I said, I would be dead if that didn't happen. And the police officers became angels. And so over that process, I went to rehab after the first DUI, and I did everything right for 30 days, wrote books worth of, resentments, and did the steps. And on my discharge, they looked at my wife and said, he doesn't get it. And I was angry because I said, look at my book. This is a PhD thesis. I wrote everything in my life. And I ended up getting arrested 2 days after I got out of rehab. And then there was, after that rehab, I ended up losing faith that I could actually beat this disease. And I started having thoughts of suicide. So I bought 100 Xanax on the internet, $3 a piece, I'm sure from a high-end Canadian pharmacy.
Oh, yeah.
And I decided I was going to take the Xanax and wean off the vodka. It doesn't work that way. And then gradually, as I started losing hope, I started thinking about how I could just consume the Xanax with the vodka and get it over with. Because I said I was going to kill somebody. I looked at it as a noble thing to just end it. And on the last DUI, I was starting to take those Xanax pills with that thought. When she called, we got in another fight. So I went with Xanax and vodka in my system, and the rest is history. I passed out, blacked out, was arrested. And when I told them of my suicide plan, they put me in a psychiatric hospital for a few weeks. And then it all became a legal process of whether I was going to jail for a very long time or whether they were going to bargain to let me go to a rehab. And because I was allowed to go to a rehab, that made all the difference in my life. And so there were some lucky breaks. It could have gone either way.
Yeah.
And as somebody who my dog's snoring on my lap. As somebody who had no hope, and this is what guided me forever. And if you've read the book, you'll know this. Is when I was in the psychiatric hospital, and I didn't want to be here anymore. And as I was sitting in the bed, the medical director of the whole facility came up to me one day, and he leaned in and he said, I once was you. And I was like in a daze. I said, what? What are you talking about? He says, I was you. I had a blood alcohol of 600. I was on life support here in this health system that we both work in. And I made it back, and you can make it back too. And he's talked about a rehab in Atlanta that he had gone to, and that the company had supported him on it. And he was going to go to senior administration and argue that I should get the same graces, I guess. And I looked at him and said, you know what? It shifted me like a small amount. It was the first time I didn't feel alone, that there was actually somebody else in the world, because I didn't know that. I thought I was alone.
Yeah.
And to have a very prestigious, responsible person admit that, I looked at it and I said, you know what, if I ever make it back, I want to be authentic, just like that guy. And that became a goal for me. So that's that moment. So it taught me that as bad as you can be, sometimes a kind word or a spiritual moment can change the entire course of your life. We don't have to go rescue the world. We can just care for someone, and suddenly you can change by giving them a little bit of hope. Their whole direction can change. And so, it was really simple. It was a long road back.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the cliff notes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love when you talk about that, because to me, when I was reading it in the book, it harkened back to Bill and Bob walking around, hospitals and sanitariums and talking to people. And for the first time, people responded because it's one of us, right? There's something about somebody saying, I get you. I know your experience. I understand it because I was there myself, as opposed to shame or why can't you get your stuff together? Because that's normally, especially for capable, intelligent, successful people, other people don't understand, how that can happen. Okay. So my next question for you is, what was or is it about capturing images that was able to kind of reawaken your spirit, your mind, your heart?
It was the camera thing. And if anybody doesn't know this, there was never a goal in my mind to be a photographer or an artist in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't even on the list. There's no desire to do any of that. So this was all happenstance. Many people ask me, how do I become a professional photographer? And I say, I'm probably not the right one to ask, because I wasn't trying to be. But when I picked up the camera, it almost became a reason for going out into places. If I went out in a beach or a mountain or wherever it was something that was new to me. It gave me a chance, instead of just being on vacation and saying, wow, it's a beautiful sunset, I wish we could live here, all that kind of stuff. I suddenly was on an island, and I had plenty of places to go, but I saw things for the first time. It's one thing to see something, and it's another thing to see something. And,
Right.
when I kind of would go, the reason became not to take a picture, but to be there. And I was back a year from rehab, a year and a half at that point, when I heard a speech about a bipolar businessman who found connection through the editing of taking pictures. It was a speaker that was talking about how the students should find their passion in life. And this is what this bipolar guy did. And I said, oh my God, this is like me. So maybe I should check this out. This might be a sign. And so a year and a half into sobriety, white knuckling, AA meetings every night, miserable, going to bed at 7:00 at night just to get the day over with. Suddenly I said, I'm going to try this. And I became obsessed with it. And I wanted to learn, and I worked out on the elliptical every day, and I looked at YouTube videos. I studied the camera, studied, and I don't know what it was. It was almost like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when he started piling mud on the table. He had something inside of him that he was out, and he didn't even know what it was. And I became that way. And I kept going out and going out. And I said, oh my God, look at this place. I didn't even really know it existed. And I kept looking up to the sky and saying, thank you, thank you. This is amazing. I just felt such a sense of connection. And what happened was a miracle. We hear about spiritual awakenings all the time. Spiritual awakening for me was that the obsession and the craving and everything left, gone, done. And it's never come back in 13 years. It's just crazy.
Unbelievable.
And so something happened. And so through the pictures, So what I do is I go and I take the pictures, but I go out and my goal is, it's like going fishing. A bad day of fishing is better than a good day at work. If your goal is, I got to get a really good picture and post it so I get a lot of likes on Facebook, you're screwed. If your goal is, I'm going to go out and try to connect to my spirituality, my higher power, to know that I'm not alone, and then I'll take whatever comes my way, then you got it. Then you got it. And so the pictures ended up being a joy or a celebration of the fact that I wasn't inside white knuckling anymore, that I had found a spirituality that I had lost, throughout my whole life. And then what I do is I go home and I edit the pictures. I put them back on the computer and I relive everything. See, I understood what this speaker said about editing the images was as important to this bipolar guy as taking the pictures. And I didn't get that. And then I would get lost in the editing and I became creative and I wanted to crop it and make it this way because I wanted to show the light over here or this or that. I relived the moment. And in that moment, I started relating the picture to my life. And things would come to my head and I'd say, Mike, this is just like you saw the darkness, but look at the light coming through. It's just proving to you that you never give up. And there's going to be pain. There's going to be suffering. There's going to be darkness, but there's always light. If you choose, you have a choice to focus on the darkness or the light. My brain would all do this crazy stuff while I was editing the photos. And so I started jotting down what I was thinking. And that became the whole gist of how everything developed from there. I'd start writing stories with the pictures and I'd tell very blunt struggles with recovery and with depression. I have bipolar disease. Depression has been a big part of my story. And I would write bluntly on social media, COO writing about struggles on social media. I mean, it was so unlike me. But it ended up connecting me to people in a way that I could have never guessed. Does that answer?
Yes, I love it because I had a question kind of teed up for later about page 30 from Through a Sober Lens, where the caption is "You choose the meaning of a photograph," and it's what you were just talking about. It's also, it must be why your photographs make me feel emotional, because that's the state that you were in when you were taking them. It's like the pictures emote things, and some of it is sadness and fear or depression or joy or gratitude, or maybe all of it together at the same time. And I think that that's what it's like to be a human, right? There's this whole full spectrum of emotion. And in my experience, I was used to pushing away the ones that I didn't want to feel and exemplifying or magnifying the ones that I wanted to feel. And that did not work. But so there's so much to pull from for questions. So I'm really trying to stay focused. But in your first book, Fighting for My Life, it says, I continually found the gap between expectation and reality unacceptable. And that hit me hard because it's so relatable. And it's so weird to look around your life and be like, I have everything on my list that was supposed to make me happy. Why do I still feel like this? Right? The material success, the family, the dog, the things, whatever. And you're like, but still I felt hollow in a lot of ways. So my question, I guess, around that is, did you ever find out what would have made it acceptable? You know what I mean? That missing piece, or did that remain elusive? Is it not that simple?
No, it was really simple because I don't think anything would have made me happy.
Yeah.
Anything. I
Yeah.
mean, because my problem was inside. I mean, put me on a yacht in the Caribbean and take away all my financial issues, and you could have stuck me anywhere and put me in any circumstance and I would have been miserable because I didn't like myself. And so every time I set a goal and I achieved it, it was meaningless when I got there. I said, whoops, this didn't make me happy. That didn't make me happy. This didn't make me happy. Nothing's making me happy. I got to drink. I got to drink. I got to drink. I got to drink. And so the expectations, I learned a lot about depression, that depression tends to is enhanced by setting a ridiculous or unreachable expectation. And when you don't make it, you become more depressed because of that.
Right.
And sometimes we have to recalibrate what those expectations are. But, and there was, and I don't mean to jump around because I think there's another question you were going to
Okay.
ask about climbing Mount Washington. It's the same thing. I deteriorated to the point going to where you're asking that no matter what I did, I couldn't find the answers. And so one day, because I was an athlete in pretty good shape, I could have won the alcoholic Olympics, but they can't. But I ended up saying, you know what, God ain't listening to you here. So you're going to go up this mountain, which is a very spiritual mountain for me. It's 7,000 feet in New Hampshire. It's not an easy hike. And I filled up my bottles with vodka, and I didn't have any water. And I started to hike, and I almost didn't make it back down. But the purpose is that I wanted to speak to God, and I wanted to know, why am I so miserable? Why do I hate myself? What is the answer? Tell me what I need to do to be at peace and to be happy. And I almost didn't make it back down, but I thought I had to have the alcohol in me to hear what he had to say, or she had to say, or whoever it is that was going to talk to me.
Yeah.
And so that continual quest for to find it ended up just not working. And when I came back down, I talked to this person who's a very spiritual person, and he just said to me, he says, you can go hike up the mountain, but the only thing you're going to find when you get there is what you brought with you inside. You bring emptiness, you're going to see emptiness. There's nothing else there. And so until you fix your emptiness, you're not going to find what you're looking for somewhere else, So I think I digressed a little bit, but
no, that was awesome. And it all ties together. All of my questions there's a recurring theme of healing and but also just honesty. And that's one of the things I love most about your experience and how you share it through your art, through your photography, through your writing, which is honest. And it's like, this is not a cakewalk, recovery is not a cakewalk, but neither was being active in our addictions. Like, there is no easy path, right? But you're honest about it. And I think for me in my recovery, my sponsor was very honest with me about what it was going to be like. And that I wasn't going to be fixed when I removed drugs and alcohol from my life, right? That's where the work was going to start. And I didn't really want to hear that, but I needed for someone to be honest with me. And it always reminds me of Andy Dufresne and Shawshank Redemption, where they're like, he swam through a river of shit and came out clean on the other side. It's kind of nasty work, man. And then you get out and you just stand in the rain and you're like, oh man, I've been running from all this for my whole life. And now I'm starting to get free. But that stuff, those little barbs get unearthed over time and they come back around. But then we have tools to deal, right? And that's what I love, is that you're honest. You don't pretend like to be perfect. You don't pretend like you have it all figured out, but you're happier and freer in recovery than you were before. And that's the point, right? Okay. So my next question is, so a lot of your photographs, and I've already talked about this, but they literally make me cry. And it's like you're emoting through the pictures, and it unearths feelings in other people based on our own filters and experiences of both joy and pain. And I love the story that you tell about the one that you have where you were teaching little kids, and the child has that understanding that someone bought the painting or the picture because it made her remember something or feel something personal to her. And that was a terrible rendition of the story, but
no, what it does, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say that you can see the gallery, that it's not going to be visible when we do when it's posted onto the podcast, but all of the pictures that are on the wall here, what I learned is when people came to visit, that sometimes the story that I would link to that photo would help. It's not like the spoiler alert. Like, if somebody looks at a photo, they have a feeling about it, and I love that, or I like that photo. But if I've told a story about it, and they come in and they see that photograph again, they ask me about it and they want to know more about the story. And the reason is because they had a time in their life when they felt that way too. And so the photograph and the words sometimes elicit something out of someone that it helps them. It's therapeutic for them. And then if they buy the photo and bring it home, they will remember those feelings attached to that photo forever. So it's not like, oh yeah, that's a beautiful picture of a boat. They're going to say, no, that tells me that I was challenged at this point, and this was when I started over. And by telling stories, I'm not trying to tell them what to feel when they see the photograph. I'm just telling them what it meant to me. And the reason they feel so emotional about it is not because they like my story. It's because it touched a part of them that they lived, that they related to. And
Yeah.
now when they look at that picture forever, they're going to have that feeling. That is the coolest feeling of taking. If you put me in here and you just said, I want you to just go sell pictures, I don't think I would last very long. I love using the pictures to help people heal through the words and the photos. They come together. And when people walk in here, that story of a little bird on a beach that I took a picture of, and when a woman came in and asked me what my favorite picture of all time was, it was this stupid little bird that nobody in the world would pick. As she was shocked. And then when I told her that I had gotten back from rehab, I learned how to take the picture. The bird was standing alone, looking out into this vast ocean, but the ocean was blurry. And I told her, but at least I couldn't tell where I'm going next, but it looks like it could be beautiful. And I have me, and I can see me again. And I can see me standing on the beach, looking out and wondering where my next step is. And she looked at me, she said, huh, and she left. And she came back 2 hours later and she bought this big photo of this stupid bird. And when I asked the kids about it at school, I said, why did she do it? And the kids said, well, maybe there was a time in her life when she was starting over too. And said, Jesus, you're pretty smart for a 10-year-old.
Hmm.
And it was a time in her life that she started over. And she was actually in tears when she bought the photograph over a stupid bird. You're making that connection with a person, something that's really important in her heart, that when she sees that picture for the rest of her life, she's going to know she started over and she was able to come back over whatever it was that she had to come back from. That makes me more happy than thinking that you just have a nice scene of Martha's Vineyard when you go home.
Right.
That's what does it for me.
Yeah, because you
Yeah.
connect the dots with the words and the visual, the images, and then you're connecting the dot by being vulnerable and sharing your experience, which gives us permission to then do the same. And then we put our own filters and experiences, and that's why. Because looking through, it took me forever to read your two books because I just would stare at these pictures and then get emotional and need to journal, and it would bring up memories. And I don't know, it was a very cathartic experience. But
Well, thank
when
you for
is the
that.
last time that you cried? And why?
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, but not
I,
really.
I, I almost cry a lot, but I hold it in. Um, I do. It's like I am one of the most emotional people in the history of the freaking world. And over listening to a song or seeing this, but the last time that I will admit to is I just left my dad.
Mhm.
He's been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he fell and broke his hip. So I've been down to Florida 3 times in the last 3 months. And I'm not good at it. I know you suffered a loss, your dad. I'm just, I've read The Art of Living by, Thich Nhat Hanh, and the Buddhist beliefs. And I've heard all these, attached to, basically be open to everything, attached to nothing, attached to nothing, be open to everything. And I've heard the speeches, and I understand the Buddhists. I understand that whatever we have, we're going to lose. There is not a single thing on this planet or in the universe that doesn't die. We will lose everything. And if you choose to attach to it, you will have a life that is sad and miserable, or you are subject to sadness because you are going to attach to something that you can't control and you can't hold on to. I can't do that.
Yeah.
To me, it takes away, there is a piece. This is going to sound strange, but one of the things I found so important about sobriety is that I could feel the pain for real. It's like I don't want to, like my dad, he's slurring his speech, because Parkinson's is a cruel disease. It deteriorates your nerves, and you watch somebody slowly fade. And it's like, I want to just say, I'll tell it to some people and they'll say, hey, he's 89 years old. He lived a good life, and there's this stoic way of looking at it, and I won't do it.
Yeah.
And, I just, maybe I'm overboard on the other side because I know what the ending is, right? We all know what the ending is. So, but I almost feel like because I'm sober, as hard as it is, it was something not right about feeling pain drunk. And now it feels okay. And I know if I stay sober and I feel it in real time, in reality, he's proud of me.
Yeah.
But
I'm fine.
you asked the question, okay? It's your fault. You asked me a question. You wanted an answer? You want an answer, okay?
Oh, okay, so I'll just do this then. So I've seen all of your social media posts and also read in your books things about your relationship with your dad and your dedication to him at the very end of fighting for my life. And and you just mentioned it, but I lost my dad. I called him Pop. I lost my pop at the end of September, and so this is all very fresh. And so you've been traveling back and forth to Florida to be with him as he faces health issues, and so I want to hear your story so I can apply it to my own and maybe help other people who are walking through this letting go, this grieving process. What are some of the program or other tools that you use to stay grounded and not get swept away by fear or sadness? Because some of this stuff is just really hard to be with. And I wish intellectually, yes, I understand detaching. I understand that, but it hurts a lot. And
Yeah.
and I don't want to not be there with that. But I don't want to get hijacked by it either because when I allow myself to feel, it's pretty intense and I get scared that I'm not going to be able to handle it. And so sometimes I just want to like make it go away. And I can't drink it away anymore, or take pills to make it go away anymore. But there's a lot of other stuff I can do, like, shop or work too much or whatever. So like, what are some tools that you're using to walk through that grief or
Well,
whatever you
I've
want to call
learned,
it?
yeah, I've got a couple of groups of people that I meet with on a weekly basis. They're these like little therapeutic groups. Right now, I'm doing an AWOL group here in the gallery. We have like 7 or 8 guys that get together every week. And unlike a regular meeting, an AA meeting where you're not supposed to crosstalk and all that sort of stuff, this is all about crosstalk. And so
Mm,
you're able to bring issues that you want to the forefront. You can talk it through. I have somebody that's I think we all have a therapist somehow or other, and so I've learned that I got it. But it's hard for me. It's hard. It's just hard because you have to have someone who doesn't say to you, "He's 89. He lived a good life." Maybe you do have to have somebody that tells you that and keeps you like straight, but I need to express my feelings. I have these people that are in my orbit here on the island that I'm able to talk to. I don't want to carry it all inside me. And
yeah.
so I intentionally bring these things up and I ask for feedback. And sometimes I just want somebody to listen so I can get it out. And, and I always look up to the sky. A lot of times when I go out to take pictures, that's where we all find God or spirit in different within people, but I find it a lot when I'm out and I spend a lot of time, especially because if people don't know what Martha's Vineyard is, it's an island. And so we have like crashing waves and amazing, and you such a connection. So many places of this island have become spiritual for me. And I actually go and sit and I look up and I say, guide me now. My favorite expression, guide me now. I don't
Mm,
know what to do. Help me with this. And so that is different than saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, I can got this under control. I don't know what to do. And so I'm admitting to the fact that I don't have all the answers. All I know is that when that last day comes, I want him to know and me to know that we had this connection and like in 50 years, we're both going to be dead and probably no one will know, but it's for me, I want him to know that I'm there for him and that he feels that and it increases the value of my life. So I look at that and say, this is what it's all about. This is the connections that people have with each other. So I don't turn it into, I cry out of a sense of, connection more than I'm losing him. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does.
anyway.
It does. Yeah, I can see that. And I know people say a lot of really weird stuff to people when they're grieving because they want to make you feel better or they feel uncomfortable and they don't know what to say. So they just say whatever. And it is a lot of stoicism and, this old Protestant, American, whatever thing of like, suck it up, you'll be fine. They had a good life, but it feels very dismissive. And what I need sometimes is somebody to say that must be really hard. I'm really sorry. I'm here for you. That's really all. And it's very important for me to be walking through it actively with people. So I want to be walking through the grief with people as they're actively grieving, because it's
Yeah.
personal that way. Otherwise it feels abstract, and far away. But a lot of the crying that I do now is because of the beauty of that connection, and that grieving the loss of him means that I really loved him and that we loved each other. And also that in the end, we did get to show up for each other, and I could feel those feelings and just be present with him and not need to run away or, numb or protect myself. And we had a really complicated relationship. So there was also that too. A lot of childhood stuff coming up, a lot of things that needed to be, mended. And the program gave me a lot of that back too. So I appreciate you talking about it, because I know it's not easy. So
I'm sorry you went through all of that. I know it's hard.
yeah,
And I'm proud of you because you didn't drink.
yeah,
And you're doing all this. It's pushing you, and you're sharing it with others, and it's going to help others get through the same thing. So
I
I know
hope
you're the
so.
interviewer, I'm the interviewee, but I'm telling you, I'm proud of you
Thank
for what
you.
you're doing.
I
Okay.
really appreciate that.
Sure.
Proud of you too. So in Through a Sober Lens, you have an entry called "Sometimes It Takes More Than One Path" on page 92. And that really struck me, because the amount of time that we're sober really doesn't mean anything if we're not addressing the root causes and conditions, right? Because we know the drinking was just a symptom. So can you recount that story for us and the meaning behind it in your own recovery and awareness? I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about. I can read it, or if you have recall,
No, I
you can.
no, no, I know I'm like I'm going to be 66, and senility is setting in. But I remember there's actually a picture in the gallery. What it is a photograph that shows a path coming to an end, and then over to the left there's another path that goes over basically you're walking down a path, and then it stops, and then to the left you have to go over a second path to get over the sand dune down to the beach.
Yes,
And what I was I used to think that when I came to a dead end, I was a failure. And there you go.
that's it. Can
And
you see it?
yes,
Okay,
that's a pretty damn good picture.
it's incredible.
Well, if there's another one in here, it's Two Paths. The name of the picture is called Two Paths. And really what it says, there's one that goes right down a road, and there's another one that goes over the sand and out where you can't even see where it's going. And the question is, which road do you want to take? Do you want to
Yeah.
take the paved road and get there fast? Or do you want to take the sandy road over the sand dunes and not really sure where it's going to go? In both cases, hopefully you make it to the end, and you can either take the easy road or you can go the bumpy road. And if you take the easy road, you will be exactly the same when you get to the end as when you left. You take the hard road, you are going to change materially when you get to the other end. Just like the poem T.S. Eliot, that we arrive where we began to know the place for the first time. You can't know the place for the first time unless you go through adversity to get you there. And so I used to think the two path thing was because I failed. And then I realized that sometimes you go and you run into a dead end. If you take what you learned, even if it was a failure, and you use it to find the next path, you were not a failure. And in fact, it had to happen. It had to happen. I used to think I wasted so many years of my life. And I said, you know what? I'm sitting here right now with you right now. If I hadn't gone through all of those things, I wouldn't be here with you, with the person who I am. I had to go through all those things. That's what I choose to believe.
And this is look at all the people you're helping now because of this. Not that you wouldn't have helped people as a COO of a big healthcare corporation, but let's get real, right? How many lives are you really impacting from a corner office versus what you do now? Making art, fighting hunger, helping people in recovery, like sharing your story, putting out these gorgeous books and all this photography. But it's
Hey, when I was a COO, I used to talk in a deeper voice, just like you did. Hi, I'm a COO. Yeah,
I have authority. Well,
I have
and
authority. I'm a COO.
it's weird because the world validates a lot of our masks and a lot of our, bravado and walls. And that's a very celebrated thing, right? Especially in corporate culture sometimes. And it's really weird when you start peeling that away. It feels odd. And like, I love your analogy of the past because I speak with sponsees and other people about, if you're mountain biking and you see this path where you go every day, you take that trail every day, you know where the tree roots are, you know how not to fall into the ravine, like you've done it and it's a well-worn path. And then on this side, it's just forest. Of course, our minds are always going to want to go that way. And those are the neural pathways. Those are the networks. That's the, if this happens, then I do this, right? It's like programming. And over here in recovery, we need to take a machete and we're going to have to walk through there and it's going to get real messy and it's a lot of work. But to your point, when you get to the end of clearing that path, it's a whole new thing. And neurologically, we are developing and carving out new networks, new neural pathways, right? We have that plasticity where we can teach our brain to do new things, but only if we actually do new things. And it's hard at first because that other path it sucks and it's miserable, but at least we know what's there. And weirdly,
Yeah, and it's like
sometimes familiarity feels comfortable, even though we know it goes to a terrible place.
no, I have a conversion van. I can fly or I can drive for 3 days in my van. Which one should I do? You know, but if you fly, I'm telling you, you fly to Florida, you get off the plane, you're the same you were 3 hours ago. You drive to Florida, you meet people, you bump into situations. It works in all circumstances
Yes.
that you get to see the country, see things, and you change materially in many cases based on the experiences you have. So you just have a decision to make, and it's not scary. It shouldn't be scary. It should be exciting. And I think that's when you make the switch. When the adversity seems scary to when you heal, it becomes exciting. And
Yes.
it's
It's an
like, okay,
adventure.
now, yeah, it becomes an adventure rather than something you're just scared to death of. So I'm glad to be in that place at this point.
So, I want to talk about mental health because many of us with addiction issues, we later find out that maybe we were self medicating and we had no idea really what was going on with us. So, in Fighting for My Life, you talk about soul work and how a lot of us need medical attention for bipolar, depression, anxiety, all kinds of other things, both while in treatment and once we're out. And you talk about getting out after 90 days. And, that's a break that a lot of people don't get to take. So, you're aware of that kind of, a lot of us do get to take
Yeah.
a break and some people don't, but it was important to you. But treatment doesn't do anything if we don't have that scaffolding in place after we leave, right? And I've learned that. I've been to treatment and got drunk or high very soon after getting out. So like I had to learn that the hard way as well. But you started going to AA meetings in Boston, and as you returned to work, family responsibilities in the day to day, you really touched on how hard that first year was for you. The fear, the anxiety, and relearning, especially in a culture where alcohol, it's not only encouraged, it's celebrated, right? Billboards, commercials, like everything in your life that's happy has to have alcohol involved, it seems like, right? What kind of scaffolding did you build for yourself in that first year? Just what are all the things you did to buoy yourself?
I was up there by myself because we were still I was in Maine by myself, and my wife at the time was still down in Boston. So I spent a lot of time with no driver's license and trying to figure out a way to get by. So it was totally dependent on the program, having people that I could talk to, be able to work through that way. Photography hadn't been established in any way, shape, or form. I was just me, the COO that was barely trying to hang on, and it was strictly the program and the friendships that I had and people that would help me get places. And I think the mental health issues, I would always told by therapists, I'd say, I think I'm depressed. And they'd say, well, are you drinking? And I said, yeah. And they'd say, well, drinking causes depression. So stop drinking and then see if you're depressed. Well, it's like, they kept telling me this over and over again. It's like, well, it's easy for you to say, but eventually in rehab, they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder and they put me on medication. And that put a ceiling and a floor on my depression and my mania. And I was allowed to I didn't tank as far, and I was able to weather some of the hits without going as low. And so that it was really the program and where I was. A lot of people didn't want me there anymore, and what I got instilled in rehab was that I had value and that I care for myself now. And it's amazing how that transition can carry you through a lot when you're in that sense of adversity. It was hard because my family was nowhere near me. I mean, I was
Yeah.
there like on my own, so kind of pushed through it that way, you know. And then recognizing and being okay with some mental health issues is important. And I've been admitted to bipolar disease on my for years on my posts on social media, and I've had, you don't know how many bipolar people come in and say, I don't feel alone anymore. Thank you so much for talking about it. I had one guy in
Yes.
here, he was actually jumping up and down, and he was 40 years old, jumping up and down. And he said, I have a manic episode, and you talk about bipolar, and thank you so much. I don't feel alone anymore. I just wanted to come and tell you that. You know, so I think when we start sharing that reinforces your heart, and then you feel like you're doing something good and your sobriety benefits, you know.
Yes.
So people,
Yeah.
yeah, people don't understand bipolar disease. When I write about alcoholism, everybody gets it. When you start talking about mental health disease, you say bipolar, and then someone says, "Well, you know, is he an axe murderer or something?" You know, and it's like some people don't understand what it is, and it's really important to talk about that as well.
Very, very important. And I'm glad that you talk about it and it normalizes it and it allows other people to talk about it because I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I don't care how much step work you do or how many meetings you go to or how much therapy you go to. If there are other issues going on, they have to be addressed. And, you know, I've heard, and I don't know that I know this isn't true of all meeting environments, but there have been things I've heard where, oh, God will fix everything, or the steps will fix everything, or this, that, and the other, almost where they shame people who have outside issues or need medication for XYZ. And I find that completely counterproductive. So I love the fact that you talk about it and that you were able to get the support from all the different directions, right? Because we need that community and everything and recovery is wonderful, but a lot of us need other things.
And just keep in mind the danger of labels, because I had someone
Yeah,
directed a 21-year-old college to me, and she says, my life is over. I got a bipolar diagnosis. And I had to convince her life wasn't over because she assumed being bipolar means your life is now ruined. And so
right.
we have to be careful of the power of labels as well. I just wanted to make that one point. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. So when you're a really successful person by the world standard, but you have an addiction that's kind of eating you alive behind closed doors, it's perplexing, to say the least, to other people and to ourselves. And you talk about your story of being this high performing COO. You were obviously driven, intelligent, capable, but you are, find yourself sitting at DWI number 3. You're getting on Xanax to wean off the vodka, of course. Then you start combining the two, which led to almost the end of your life. And could you have ever been convinced that things could change as much as they have? Because on page 77, you talk about helping others. And I guess my question really out of this is, do you remember the first time that you realized that your story could actually spark hope and help another addict? That value that you talked about, when is the first time you were like, oh my God, I can use this for good?
Yeah, it was definitely in rehab, because in the 3-month rehab, and I know not many people can get it, but 3 months is like super important. And it's not just because of the length of time you're not drinking. It's because you go through phases of education. The third month, you become a mentor, and you end up going out and being the patient representative for new patients coming into the programs. And there was a story in the book about a 18-year-old girl who came in to the program, and I was assigned to go pick her up and the mother with the staff member at Hartsfield Airport. And when we got back, the two of them were screaming and crying, and I sat there in the room for 8 hours with them while they were trying to get processed through admissions. And the mother was saying to me, she's not going to make it. I didn't know what it is she had done, but she was so shameful that she's afraid she's never going to make it, and she's afraid her daughter's going to harm herself, and blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was like 50 something. What am I going to do with a 17-year-old little red haired girl in the room there? And when I just out of stupidity, I had a coin of a graduation token that someone had given to me. They really wanted me to have it because they wanted to see me make it through. And we had a close relationship when they graduated. And I said, you know what, I'm going to try something out of the box here. So I took the token out and I went up to her, and she was crying. And I said, listen, I'm giving you something. And she stopped crying for a minute because she was abruptly stopped by me. I said, I'm going to give you this. And I want you, and you're going to keep this coin, and it's going to help keep you strong. And when you're done feeling shame about what you've done, because you don't have any reason to be shameful, you have a disease. And then I want my coin back, but not until you stop feeling shame. And so she took the coin. And when I walked out of the room, I said, what an idiot you are. How stupid can you be? I mean, she's going to look at it and say, what the frick is this idiot doing? Give me some like little token coin, like fell out of a gumball machine or something. And it's, I left and I said, God, you really are starting to make an ass out of yourself as you get sober. And then I went away, and I came back 3 months later for a revisit, because for $25 you get to go back for 4 days and remember what life was like. And I kind of faintly thought maybe she might still be there. But I said, she's not even going to remember that. She was in such a traumatic place at the moment. And I walked into the room, and it was completely filled. And she saw me, and she ran from the front of the room all the way to the back. And she had the coin in her hand. And she just expressed how much that meant to her. And it was like one of the best moments I've ever had. It was cool.
Incredible. It's just...
You want to know when I cry? I'm trying to not to right now. Okay. Are you happy?
But it's crazy. That's crazy.
It's just the power of like being honest and not judging what you're doing. You're trying to help somebody, and just do it. And then when you show that it made a difference in their lives, suddenly you have value. And I started doing things like that, and it started to add up. Your emotional bank started to get full, and
yes,
it would have been depleted for so long. So
because your motives, when your motive really is to help someone, and you don't really know how to talk somebody through what they're about to experience, but you're just all it is like, look, I've been where you are, and I'm in a better place now, which means that you can also be in a better place too. And because I don't know about you, but for me, I didn't believe that was possible for me. I just didn't. I saw a bunch of other people who'd gotten sober. They seemed happy. They seemed balanced and adjusted, whatever. But I was like, that's probably not going to happen for me. And it's all we need is a little bit of hope to hold on to in the beginning. And sometimes it's as simple as hold on to this medallion for me. And also just being honest about, the fact that it was hard, but you're not alone. And so those are the things that really touch my heart. And I loved reading that story. I also love the fact of how that program that you went through, given that it was 90 days, so your mind and body actually have time to start to heal. You're absorbing all this information. Hopefully we're unlearning some stuff that wasn't helpful. And it's a long enough time to actually start to make that impact. But also how you guys lived in an apartment complex as a community. And it was it sounded like a very different setup, and it was phased. Right? You get a little more responsibility. You're able to start helping other people. You get immersed in a program so that you have practice of what it's going to be like out in the real world. Instead of, hey, come hang out with us for 28 days, pretend like the world doesn't exist, and then we're going to like drop you right back off in the middle of what you were doing before, which is why it doesn't work for so many.
No,
right?
We had, the particular program, a lot of other rehabs have modeled after that program. It was Dr. Talbot who put it together, and you are in apartments with real people from day one. I mean, you're attached to all the other men or women, depending on where you are. You're living in an apartment complex, with live folks there, and you're driving into work past the liquor stores and past. But there were rules that are set up, and in many cases, we all came to the rescue. We'd have people walking to the liquor store, and we'd come flying up in a car and grab them, throw them in the car like it was an abduction. And you'd grab them, throw them in, and you'd bring them back to the apartment complex. So you learned how to survive in the wild but you had friends with you as a good starting point before you went home, and maybe you didn't have as many there to protect you, but at least you had faced these things before you got back, you know. So it
Yes.
was a cool model, really. Yeah.
I love that. I love it so much. It kind of goes right into this next question because we're getting ready to wrap up here, but and you may have just answered it with what you were just saying, but what's the most practical piece of advice you'd like to leave listeners with today regarding recovery? And a lot of people who listen to this podcast, they may not be in recovery yet. They may be sober curious. They may be thinking about it. They may be vaguely aware that alcohol is maybe blocking them off from some happiness in their lives. So it could be advice for anybody, really.
Yeah, we all have a place in the village. I know you have done a lot of podcasts with folks, and they all have different pieces of it, whether it's, you know, religion or it's AA or whatever. I believe my little component is the finding of passion in your life. And there's something that I heard somebody say once: don't die with your music still in you. Don't die with
Mm.
your music still in you. Meaning that when I walked into the gallery for the first time and I looked around and I just looked at everything, I just broke down crying. And I put my head around and I said, where did this come from? Where did it come from? And it was such a moment. I couldn't, I looked inside me and I said, it was in there. I had no clue. And it took all of the adversity and being knocked down to find something that I would have never discovered inside me ever in my whole life. And I wonder how many people who are drinking, how many people are in recovery, have something inside them that is never going to be revealed unless they allow themselves to hear the messages and to explore and to. So I mean, I can go into AA and the need for, so, but we don't have all that time here in this. I bring to the table, the reason I speak and the other things that I do is that whether it's cooking or whether it's photography or painting, you're trying to connect to a spirituality, but it also connects you to other people at the same time. It's another tool in the toolbox that they never talked about in rehab. They never talk about, wow, that I made it back because I found my way back to God and spirit through connecting through what I do through photography. And that got me back to people. And so I just don't want that to get lost out there, is that there's could be somebody hiding inside you, and I chose to listen to the messages, and it took me to a place that I could have never imagined. And then we can add on AA and all of the other things that you need to do to stay sober, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure that at least that piece gets heard in the whole dialogue, you know.
Yeah, because a lot of the spiritual, that channel to nature, music, art, connecting with other human beings, that all eventually gets blotted out by alcohol. I mean, I don't know, for most people, our worlds get very small. There's a lot of isolating going on. And the idea of having to join or be part of a community for me was a nightmare. I was like, what? No, I'm not a joiner. I don't want to be around people. I don't need friends. Thank you very much. And so, but the program, whatever that is for you, and it's different for everybody, it asked me to behave in a way that's completely counterintuitive to the way that I'm wired, which, for me, I know the answers are within, but I almost have to have it mirrored back to me by other people. And that's what I love about this entry that you said, and this is on page 29 and Fight for My Life, but you said, I once read this quote: people spend a lifetime searching for happiness, looking for peace. They chase idle dreams, addictions, religions, and even other people, hoping to fill the emptiness that plagues them. The irony is the only place they ever needed to search was within. While I find this quote enlightening, I also learn true meaning comes from engaging in community and the richness that comes from friendships. And to me, that is the difference. In my addiction, I was extremely alone. I could be surrounded by 100 people and I still felt completely alone and isolated. And then learning to
Yeah.
trust and connect with other people is what A, taught me I wasn't alone, but also that I'm not weird, I'm not broken, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just working through life with this, maladapted, you know, um, addiction. And those are the kind of things I think that we really miss in our when we're in active addiction. So my last question, I think, I don't know, I have so many. How how do you get to your kind of flavor of spirituality, because you and I are in the same boat in terms of, I don't know, the way you talk about it doesn't make me, it doesn't trigger me. It doesn't make me feel, defensive or weird or wanting to get into my intellectual pride. It's very open. It's just very open. And it's spirit, it's source, it's nature, it's people, it's animals, it's just all these different things. Where does that come from? Is that something that you've developed over time? Is it sort of how you were raised? What is that? How does God show up for you, and how did you have this end up with this really open-minded spiritual concept?
So I was a Catholic,
Oh
and
boy.
that was, I'm not going to go there. Okay. I used to actually do readings in church and everything. And I didn't honestly find God there. And I didn't find it at most steps on my life along the way. But I will tell you, I guess, let me just say it this way, that I almost can't, I do pictures a lot of footprints in the sand. And, the
Hmm.
saying that, where two sets of footprints went to one, you can't see my prints, but I was there all along
Yeah.
carrying you. That's why there was a single set of footprints. And so I do, it's kind of corny. I do those pictures, especially with me and my dog. And I almost feel like there's a presence when I'm available. When I'm not available, it's not there. When I'm available and I communicate and I feel this presence and then I'm not alone. And when I get all the crap away and I go out where I need to go, I feel it strongest. And when I go to honor that, and I know I'm not being very specific. You mean, it's not like a guy or a girl. It's not anything. It's a feeling that there is I believe we're part of an energy, that if I'm in my flow, if I'm doing something that I was meant to do, life becomes seamless, ego falls away. Everything just unfolds. You meet people, you help people. It all comes together. If you're honest and open and you do the things you were meant to do and you're in this flow. When I get into the flow, it's not because I want to go take a picture. It's because I want to connect. And when I connect, I'm in the flow. The picture happens. When I go to connect and I am there, I meet a person. That story helps them, helps me. Suddenly all these coincidences happen. It happens all the time. When I want to go take a picture, I want to be popular on Facebook, I want to feed my ego, all the coincidences go away, everything falls apart, and I end up taking shitty pictures. Nobody gives a crap. I don't give a crap. I want to just put the camera down and quit. There's a spiritual flow you're in or you're not. And you're either connected to this spiritual energy. I don't feel alone when I'm there, but I can isolate off of it and I can totally make a mess. And so in my best, I know there's something there. I can look up and I can't really name it. I don't have a religious perspective on it, but I'm not smart enough to not believe that there's some life energy that it supports you or you're fighting against it. You're either going against the current or you're going with the current. And if you're acting with integrity, you're doing what your heart needs to do, and you're helping other people, you are going with the current. And it just all blends together as this beautiful thing that makes your life amazing. And that's what I choose. That's what it means for me. I'm not good at analyzing it, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Beautifully said.
so well, I hope so. I don't know, because it's like hard to identify. The whole spirituality and God thing is hard for people to wrestle with.
Yeah.
I But not for me, not at that level,
Yeah.
and Catholics, God bless them, if they're helping each other out and they're using it as a means for community. Whatever your religion is, I have nothing against anybody, but it's not my area.
That's how I feel too. If it's making you want to be a better person and it helps you in your recovery and all of that, then good. That's great. But I feel
Yeah,
the same way you do. Is when my channels are open, I feel peaceful, even when outcomes aren't going the way that I want them to, because there still will be hard things. And I think the way I was raised, it was like, if you're good and you're perfect, then God will give you what you want. And then when you realize, like,
yeah,
wait a second, that's not true, because I see hard things happening to good people and this and that, and then you just realize, oh, this is life on life's terms. My connection is what makes me feel peaceful, and nature is a huge part of it. for me, but also kindness in animals and connecting with other people. And I finally realized that I am, like you said, I am not smart enough to figure it out. And I don't need to. I just need to know that it's not me that's in charge of the universe. And also that I can connect to it anytime I want, you know? But yours is
And that's
it's
why
very calming to hear you talk about it.
it's, and you don't, on the tombstone, I don't want people to say he was a photographer. That's, that's not the point. The point was, is that I was given a message that I chose to listen to come back to life in my language is photography.
Yeah.
I connect with people in nature and spirit through photography. It just ended up being my language. There's lots of languages in the world. Someone could be a cook, someone could be whatever. I came back to life through the connection created by taking a camera, and it pushed me out back into the world again. I'm not a photographer. I'm I want people to know that they can come back to life without having to take good pictures. That's not what the point is.
Right.
You don't have to take
Right.
good pictures. You need to use whatever is in your heart, that voice within you, the music that's still inside you. Some people have things that they can use that can just release their heart and they can help people with it, whatever. And then just don't sell yourself short. It's the process. It's not the title or the
Right.
actual, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And when you remove all that clutter and junk, like you were saying, we somehow find our way back into alignment with what we were meant to be doing in the first place. But we've got to clear the path, which is kind of what you're saying. And it can be music, art, cooking, just whatever for different people. But if we're all cluttered up, it's hard to find that. And I think it's interesting too that even when you were in your drinking, you were still trying to go to mountaintops seeking. You were seeking it because you knew it was there and you wanted it and you needed it, but we didn't know how to find it. And it's interesting how we had to find it, by getting rid of the things that we thought were keeping us safe or making us okay. Okay, last question. When's the last time, what makes you belly laugh? Like, when's the last time you just like laughed really hard?
oh, geez, like belly laugh. I love kids more than anything else.
Yeah.
And they all come here in the gallery. And when I see the kids, especially when they're feeling, especially with my dog, Brody and Rocket Man, they make me laugh the most. All right.
Yeah.
I think I sent you some pictures of the two of them. They work
You
here in
did.
the gallery.
Yeah.
And I am kids that I think where I have the most fun and which maybe makes me like doing what I'm doing is I love being with kids and the innocence of what they do cracks me up, especially with some silly things like on Instagram with what dogs and cats and stuff do. Those things just crack me up, and I start laughing my ass off watching it because it's got the innocence associated with it. It's not something just contrived. It's like the students in my class, I tell them, you have to revert back to 4 years old because 4 year olds can take better pictures than you because they have this insatiable curiosity. They'll say anything, they'll do anything because there's no filter. And sometimes it just makes you laugh and feel. Those are the situations that I love the most,
I love that. I love that freedom. And I remember
Yeah.
when I first got sober, you feel like I'm never going to have fun again. I'm never going to do this again. It feels very like, ugh. And then as you awaken again in recovery, when you're laughing, it's genuine, right? It's not chemically induced. And when you're connecting with someone, it's for real. It's not because of alcohol but the belly laughs and the moments of joy and sobriety, it's just one of the most pure. And kids and animals to me too. That kids especially are insane, but animals, what they do, it cracks me up. Well, you really are a ray of human sunshine. Like your work touches so many people, and I am so grateful that you joined me today. And I couldn't believe you said yes. I was like, so I have been so excited and so happy, and I can't wait to put this out into the world. I know you've told your story many times, but thank you for everything that you do for the collective community of sober people.
Back at you.